allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, let's bow our heads and add to the prayer. Our dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you. You've blessed us continually in this country. Want to remember the veterans that we celebrated yesterday and their contribution and sacrifice they did to our country. Lord, help us as commissioners and leaders in this county to utilize your wisdom in decisions that we make, decisions that we do make, Lord. Help it to fit your plan. We ask all these things in your name. Amen.
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 Next time. Okay, getting started here with our agenda. Should have received the minutes from the May 20th meeting. Anybody have any questions about
I did
those?
have one or two minor corrections that I fixed.
Okay.
I read through them. I stand. They're fine with me.
Make a motion to approve the minutes for May 20th, 2025.
Second that motion.
Good. That motion carries.
Okay, the next thing I have are the payroll AP claims for all the benefits and so forth. And the payroll AP claims amount is $353,807.47, $353,807.47.
Move that we accept those claims.
Okay, motion carries.
benefits money?
That, yeah, that's benefits and taxes and whatnot.
Yeah.
I always find it interesting how it's nearly as much as our
Yeah.
payroll.
Yeah.
That blows me away that we,
I don't know how.
that the benefits piece of that is almost as much
Which
as
shows
payroll.
how well the county treats them with that.
Well, obviously, it's one of the reasons that we are able to hire quality people.
And keep them. Unfortunately. Okay.
Agreed.
Next, I have the Allied monthly insurance claim. That's the administrative portion of it. And the amount of that is $70,753.05, $70,753.05. And it shows on that second page what all included in that.
You want a motion to approve on that?
I do. I always have to remember that not only does this include those administrative fees, but also includes our reinsurance. What's the right term for that? Yeah, stop loss premium, which the majority of this is stop loss premium. A very small piece of it is actually administrative claims. So it sounds like a lot of administrative claims to me whenever I think about it, but yeah, but I need a motion on that.
What is the amount again, Steve?
It's $70,753.05.
Go ahead, Stan.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, thanks, guys. That motion passes.
Okay, now we have the quarterly USI insurance services claim, and that is in the amount of $9,000. I forgot to sign that, so I just signed it. If you want to sign it after they approve it.
Motion to approve.
Second. Okay, motion carries.
Okay. It seems to be insurance week. Because we also have the weekly health insurance claims. And I believe this is all medical, let me be sure. All medical. I did verify claimants. And the amount is $28,178. $28,178.
I move that we approve the medical claims.
Second.
And the final thing that I have would be the accounts payable claims, and you should have received those via email. And the amount of the accounts payable claims is $514,184.36. 514,184.36.
I didn't have any questions on that.
Yeah, just the one, on local road and street, Brad, you had a Selking International for 105,833. Was that for
New single axle chassis,
how many?
single axle.
One single axle? That's the only question I had. So with that being said, I moved we approved the claims in the amount of 184,184.36.
I'll second that.
Motion carries. Thanks, guys.
Is that 105,000, Doug, something like that?
The single axle
chassis.
was $105,833.43. That was a single axle chassis, not including the bed, right?
Nope, just the chassis, right?
That includes an AM radio and roll-up windows.
It's actually Bluetooth.
All right. Well, you're one up on my pickup truck.
Well, we try and encourage that for safety. That way their phones can hook directly.
Absolutely.
There you
I agree. I agree. Is that all you have, Tony?
That's all I have.
Okay, moving on, Nate. Good morning.
Couple of different items here, not much honestly, but on discussions regarding Bridge 105, that's that deck overlay rehab that we've been talking about. Because that project was not funded for the 2030 federal funds, I'd like to try to pursue some other more immediate rehabilitation work that we can do in the next 5 years and fit that in. What I'm considering doing is a mill and overlay, or an asphalt overlay as a preventative maintenance, essentially creating a wearing surface. I'd reached out to HWC Engineering, who had done some of the early estimates to facilitate the grant application. That was unsuccessful, but they are at least familiar with the project. And I gave them some scopes of how we can kind of work together and get their cost very low for this. And they have submitted a draft proposal for a not to exceed fee of $15,000. If you're in agreement, then what I'll do is I'll reach back up to them, get a contract, and then you can vote on the contract. But what I just wanted to bring that up is if you're interested in that, I believe I have enough money in the budget for this year under consulting services.
Sure.
So if you're good with it, then I'd like to try to start that engagement process. So I really don't need a vote, but if you're confident in that, then I'll pursue that and bring back a contract that you can then vote and sign on.
What's the urgency on doing the overlay?
I'm just trying to be ahead of, right now, because of the advanced wear on this, really, it was one of the questions that we got when I even presented it to NDOT was, can this wait 5 years for funding? I'm like, well, it's gonna have to wait until we get this thing in a fundable position. So right now, since it's not gonna receive grant funds, I'm gonna have to do something more immediate to try to prevent the deterioration of those beams. So if you've been out there to look at it, the washboarding that's been caused by the buggies is pretty severe in some areas. It has been overlaid, so it's in the overlay is where a lot of this wear is. But as soon as I get moisture underneath that, then that overlay can delaminate, and then I'm gonna have more of a safety issue immediately. And it's gonna start causing deterioration of the beams underneath that. So I need to try to protect it. And whether it's an asphalt wearing surface that needs to be done more often, or if I do a high performance concrete overlay that's more armored, that may be a more permanent solution. And anything in infrastructure is not permanent, but
Would that 15 cover either way?
yeah. So, and they actually had said in their early draft, their draft letter to me is, well, depending on how much work I do, that may come down even more. So I actually have a draft set of plans that I've been working on in preparation for this that I have not shared. So I'm hopeful that hopefully they'll be able to cut this by quite a bit, but this is still, in comparison to some of the other consulting contracts, this is like 20% of what we've paid on other projects of similar type. So this is a significant savings here in just what I've set up already. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to stay in this sort of range. But that's really at the mercy of some of the consultants that we can bring in.
Well, I really appreciate you putting time, effort and money into maintenance to stay ahead of problems.
It's gonna be a goal of mine for the next 5 to 10 years to try to do more sort of maintenance projects. Yes, we need to do replacements and major rehabs, but I'm gonna try to be doing a more widespread maintenance program for the bridges because of where we're at condition wise. And it's hard to prove the payback on that necessarily because the data is so long. You have to create a long track record for that to actually show you the benefits of it. But based on the research that I can find and what I'm being told from both Purdue University, NDOT and others, they've been promoting it heavily. So that's obviously what I'm gonna try to implement based on where we're at currently. So,
Very good.
but
You
no,
don't need them.
I don't need you to vote on it. If you're good, then I'll pursue that and bring back an agreement. So I won't surprise you
Okay.
with a proposal, hopefully. And it won't be next week. It'll probably be in 2 weeks before that.
Yeah, I have no problem with it.
Excellent. Thank you. And then, lastly, I did get the A proposal for the guardrail repair at the Matthias Miller ditch. That's at Bridge 122, but it's the one been talked about the slide, the slope stabilization work. So I had received one proposal or one quote back. I had reached out to 3 different firms and unfortunately, because we're getting into the busy season, stuff gets dropped or they're busy, so they're not making commitments. So I only received one response and that was from C-Tech. And their proposals for $8,900 for repair and replacement of that guardrail. And that includes mobilization, the guardrail with the W beams, using 8-foot long posts. So these are extra long posts that they're gonna put together for this. And they're gonna put that guardrail end treatment, that OS soft stop that we're transitioning to.
Mhm.
So they're gonna put that on the end as well for that $8,900.
Feels like a reasonable amount. Would you agree with that?
It is, it's a small project, so I got a $500 mobilization on this one, which is a better deal than what I had on the one on
Right.
000. Because that one was so small, so you're within a couple $100, about $1,000 of that repair to this one. Just because they're baking into this the cost of their time, because they can't, if they come do this job, they can't do another job that day.
Yeah.
So that's the unfortunate part. I'm gonna start reaching out to these firms to figure out ways to make our bids more competitive, whether I group projects for larger, then maybe I'll be able to save some more money on that. So right now, we're just trying to deal with the emergency ones at the moment, but I'm gonna start coming up with a better strategy on dealing with guardrail. This one, I would ask for a vote. And then I'll sign it. If you're fine with that, if you're okay with authorizing me to sign this, then I'll send it off to them to get it on the schedule. Their schedule right now is just end of the year, so.
I'll make a motion, Steve, that we approve the quote of 8,900 for the guardrail. Stan, unless you have an issue.
No, I'll second that. Yeah.
Okay, motion carries.
It's
Thanks,
it's always nice to group projects for a contractor unless you're closing 2 or 3 bridges across the river at the same time.
You know, it's just where you're at and how you're doing it. So I'm hopeful we'll be able to make these a little more competitive in the future. It's been the problem with guardrails. There's just not enough companies to do the work. It's a specialty. It's material cost, time, equipment, experience.
Where they out of anyhow, just out of curiosity?
C-Tech is out of Bogstown, Indiana. So I'd reached out to James H. Drew Specialties Inc., which also does some paving and specialty soils work. So I reached out to those 3 firms and only received the one quote. I think unfortunately, it's just the time of year that we're in. If I had waited till October, maybe, but I'm trying to make sure that I can at least try to get this guardrail done as soon as
Yeah.
that slope stabilization. We're trying to balance this. So that's where we're at with it, unfortunately.
Good deal.
Other than that, any questions for me?
And
Good. Thanks,
Yep.
Nate.
Thank you.
Brad, come on down.
This is
Morning, Brad.
Good morning, guys.
hey, Brad.
Pretty simple day today. Just to let you give you an update. We've sold 2,686 buggy plates. They ended the 15th, but there's a few that come in late. And then dust control also, that was the last day to take dust control and hoping to get out and spray it in the next couple of weeks. weather dependent. Obviously, the weather has not really been our friend here lately.
Right.
So, and then one other thing, to go along, Nate was talking about the guardrail on the bank slipping. And it was interesting, I was talking with Mike Worling, and I can't remember if he said it in the drainage board meeting or not, but he talked to a gentleman from Allen County. And we always just kind of thought that it was maybe because it was dry, we'd had a dry summer. And he called it bankful, if I remember right. And what it is when we get the big hard rains, the water comes up a lot more often than it used to. So they're actually more saturated is the way I understood it. So then that's what causes all these bank spots. So you think, a lot of the time anymore, when we get the big rains, ditches come up fast and they go down fast.
Mhm.
Or they go down fast some.
Mhm.
I just thought that was interesting. I never knew what
Cause that slippage.
Yeah,
Oh.
the slippage.
Hmm.
That's what Mike found out.
Interesting.
Yeah. Other than that,
Okay, just one question, on the, county line, J County Line Road.
uh-huh.
Several years ago, probably at least 5, we did some bank stabilization along
We
that.
drove sheet piling.
Right, is that holding up pretty good?
Yeah, the sheet piling and the guardrail that's there looks good. That's not moving, but there's still bank movement on the river side of that. And it's still moving. But at this point, we keep an eye on it. So it's nothing critical at this point. We just keep an eye on it, make sure we don't get a surprise someday and it goes whoosh.
Yeah, that's, the river's right,
It's right
right,
against.
right there against it,
Yep.
yeah,
The sheet piling's doing well.
good.
Other than that, have a
Do we
great
have-
day.
Do we have a paint truck yet?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Well, you want the paint?
Stripes.
I know.
Are you guys doing research on that?
Yes, we're researching it. We still haven't heard back from NDOT yet. We just would kind of like to get an idea from them, what their costs are like and what all that entails. So we still haven't heard from them. So we'll email them again and see if they can give us some information. So,
And your interaction with NDOT would be what phase of that work? Is it just getting, you had mentioned on the way, up to Fort Wayne, talking about, if we're gonna start painting lines on roads, we have to get, especially if we're gonna paint no passing zones, we have to get a
oh, yeah, thank you.
assessment
Yes.
done and some
Yes, that
things
is
like
correct. I forgot.
that.
If you remember, a lot of times when we do paint striping, there's a company out of Ohio called Mastermind. We have to have studies done on each section of road, and they determine the passing, no passing, just the way the stripes are laid out in that whole section of road. So for every mile of road that we haven't had done in the past, we have to have a study done then we can pass that on to the company so they know. I know what you say.
But
legally or-
we could paint edge lines at least wherever we wanted to, right?
Yeah.
I
as
mean,
far-
you wouldn't have to have any studies done. or
No, not for
anything.
edge lines,
And
no.
could we paint a center line, or once you do a center line, then do you have to do no
Yes,
passing?
when you start with those center lines of any kind, you've got to have a study done because, and there again, that would go back also to me, the liability of it.
Yeah.
Because if we just guess and go out and do it and something would happen.
But one of the things would be a little bit difficult, you'd have to look ahead about, what do you do, 70 to 80 miles chip and seal every year?
Yeah.
Or there's no use painting this year,
Yeah.
they're gonna chip and seal
Yep.
those 80 miles next
Yep.
year.
And that's what we do. Like for this year, when we contracted to get our roads paint striped, we made sure those roads are not on the chip seal list.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
not only that, but after you chip seal a road, probably needs at least a couple years for it to get patted down to where the paint would hold. Unless those stones are,
It would hold to the stones, especially in the center because that's not as heavily traveled. We've learned some lessons, about certain types of traffic with edge lines.
yeah.
They don't last long.
Have you done any research into equipment as far as what it would take to equip a truck to paint?
A painter.
Yeah, Paul's been
Paul's
doing
working on
research on
that.
that, yes.
Okay.
Yes. Getting
Yeah, 'cause
costs,
I-
and paint costs.
I think it would just give us more flexibility and it would give us more safety on the roads, and I think it would just be more efficient in the
Yeah.
end. Because like now, if you have to contract way ahead, and then till you make sacrifices on what quality of paint you use, and then the paint doesn't last very long. you know, that's maybe not the best way to spend money is on a
And
lower
then
quality
too-
paint.
Too, it might get into the labor, a labor issue too.
Well, and that's the other thing too, you know, a couple weeks ago, I kind of alluded to that too. Because the time to do the paint striping is when the weather's nice and it's warmer, which is also when we do chip seal. So down the road, that's another thing too, to look at is, you know, probably be nice to have a couple more people if we would go that route.
Well, and the other thing is, rather than adding people, in the summer, when you go to 4 10-hour days, it would almost make more sense, you know, to ask a guy, hey, you wanna work Friday? You can paint all day Friday and pay him overtime.
And the thing to remember though, it'd take at least 4. If you ever watch them when they paint stripes, so you got a driver in the truck and then a gentleman in the paint booth. And have you ever noticed they always have, I would call them tag trucks, where they're spaced out behind them.
Oh,
So they know how long it takes for a paint to dry, so people aren't coming through fresh paint. So it'd be at least 4 people.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but I mean, that kind of stuff needs to be researched and stuff. But
Yeah.
I guess in my opinion, it's definitely worth researching, and I think it would be good to have that capability anyway.
Yep.
I
So
think,
yes, we are researching.
I think we'd have better roads and better safety on account of that, so. So I appreciate you putting the effort.
Yeah, just bring us some numbers, some data we can look at.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, good deal. Thanks,
All right.
Thanks,
Brad.
Brad.
All right.
Yep.
Thank
Brad,
you.
just one thing, how many dust control requests did you get this year at dust control? 20 or 30?
No, don't quote me on numbers, but I think it's 27.
Right there. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's back up and they got it. Good
Morning, Clay.
I think that's. Here's. Okay, good deal. Okay, Rick, I don't see Rick here.
He had a couple, I talked to him earlier this morning,
Do you have
Steve, he had
anything? Do you have
he had a couple restrooms that were,
I noticed Bogway said in front,
yeah,
so,
so he said he may here, may not.
okay, good deal. Very good. Okay, we're running a little early, but Jody,
All right.
it's not very often we're running ahead of time, but today's your day.
I'm right there
I
with you
appreciate you
then.
being here.
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
You still putting up with Shannon?
I am. And Tony. Don't forget putting up with him.
Jody, why don't you introduce yourself to our new Commissioner Doug? I don't believe you've
I think
met
we
yet.
met before.
Doug
I think
Bauman?
it's been a while, but yes, we have. It's a pleasure seeing
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Stan, you're welcome.
Yeah, some that we can have.
I sure
At least
do.
you get on. At least you get on.
Yeah. That's what I hear from you. What you say?
It's a rumor I started.
Okay. All right. Yeah, you may look
We
at
get,
it
we
if
get
you
a
have it
card.
back.
You got a card now?
I do have a card.
Judy Kins, here it is. Judy Kins.
You got it?
It's on the front here.
I'm happy to give you a card. All
Where
right.
you from, Ohio?
I'm from Fort Wayne.
Oh, Fort Wayne, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
no, you're good.
Fort Wayne.
Fort Wayne, Indiana. All the way. All right, first thing on my agenda here this morning would be to look at the updated claims experience. So we've got claims experience through the month of April. So the first page we're looking at would be our dashboard as it relates to our stop loss protection. So if we look at plan year to date, and that just represents the first 4 months, and it's paired beside full calendar years of 2024 and 2023. So the total expected claims year to date through April was pegged at $622,585 when we looked at the renewal. Where we're performing to that is $604,308 towards our contract, which is a net difference to the positive of $18,277. So we're performing relatively well as it relates to expected claims costs at 97.1%.
That's with more employees.
That's with 167 employees. To annualize that and develop, if we would continue the rest of the year on the same path and at the same level, which claims can change, right? But if we were to continue at the same level and we were to annualize that number, that's on column or line 4 for you. That develops a per employee per year claims cost. And we'll look at total costs when we get to the next page of $10,888 compared to where we ended the year in 2024 of $11,065, in 2023 at $10,640. So we're down 1.6% on a claims per employee per year from where we ended the prior year.
Well, like you said, claims can change quite a bit. One thing I'm curious, do we typically see a higher amount of claims in the last 6 months as opposed to the first 6 months?
Yeah, you can see that fluctuation because at the beginning of the year, obviously, there's some deductibles and co-payments, and then sometimes people use, summertime as vacations to maybe get some procedures done. What we haven't seen so far this year, knock on wood, and it's great news, is many inpatient hospitalizations. So your medical costs are considerably down. We haven't had those large claimants compiled as a result of large inpatient hospital. Now we're going to talk about pharmacy a little bit more. We have seen pharmacy right now, if you look at the last bullet point on the right, is running about half of our claims. We know why. We have still seen some savings from the Prudent RX that you implemented. And that continues to give us about a 10 to 12% savings in a couple of large prescriptions that's being managed through the Prudent RX plan. We have just entered into review with some different pharmacy vendors and looking at potential savings along with improved service and full transparency in those contracts. Shannon and I have had one of 3 meetings that we intend to have. I think we have another one this week and then one more next week. So we are looking at ways with different partnerships, not changing pharmacy access for your employees. They would have the same pharmacies available to them that they have today, but with some improved contracts in place that might give us some planned savings as it relates to that, along with a true partner that's helping us on an ongoing basis with monthly reporting so we can really dig in and see where the pharmacy costs are and what the options are to help control that.
Is it an advantage to have our own pharmacy at our county hospital?
We've talked a little bit about that. We can, as we work through the different vendors, we can see how they could capture that into the partnership with them. I know there's one of the 3 specifically, Stan, that we could potentially mold that as part of the program, but we want to look at the data and make sure that we're making a prudent decision relative to that. But it's definitely something that could be a possibility as we work with one of these different partners that's coming to the table from us in the negotiation process.
Good.
Okay. The large claimants, you'll see there we have so far this year 4 claimants that we start tracking when it hits a portion of their individual specific level, which represent $293,666 of claims. We'll look at that a little bit on a subsequent page. You have 2 individuals who have exceeded the standard individual stop loss, but those 2 are individuals who had a higher specific relative to their claims as we approached and negotiated the renewal. So there's no stop loss reimbursements as of yet in this contract here. If we look at the next page, this is intended then to not only bring your claims dashboard into perspective, but add to it your fixed cost, as well as, again, those individuals that had a higher specific that aren't going towards our aggregate yet. It brings back into what the cash outlay for that is as well. So again, looking left to right, we have year-to-date 4 months compared to the prior 4 years that have full calendar years. We have our enrollment at 167, which you've stayed very consistent, up a little bit over prior years, but we've really averaged a relatively smooth enrollment history. Expected claims, as we looked at the front page, was 622,585. Our gross medical claims, 332,157. And then gross RX claims, 356,055. One additional thing I'll say about the gross RX, there are a couple of current medications that are going to be transferred sometime in 2025 to have other, what they call biosimilar prescriptions available that are a lot less costly. So again, we feel that that number will come down. Relative to total claims, the reason it's a higher level, because again, we haven't had large, again, inpatient or large claims outside of that on the medical side this year. So that's really a component of a couple of things that we're keeping our eyes on. But if you look then, again, no claims over stop loss being reimbursed yet. We pull out the $83,904 of claims that are not going towards your aggregate, and I'll show you where that's pulling from on our next page. Gives us your total net that we had looked at of 604,308. To get back to your true cost, then we add back in that 83,904. We add in your cost for stop loss, your cost for administrative, gets you to total net at the end of the first 4 months of 982,321. Again, if we develop a per employee per year, which means we're annualizing that, if we stayed on the exact same path we're on today, gets you to the bottom far right of a number of $17,699 per employee per year that's being spent on the healthcare plan claims and fixed cost, which is down 3% from where we ended the year last year.
I forget, Shannon, did we adjust the employee contribution?
We have not. We have not adjusted that since I believe 2016.
Because I couldn't remember. I know we had that discussion.
We did not.
And again, this year, Stan, we will, our annual benchmarking study, which will show relative to about 10,000 other prospects and clients that are engaged in the process. And we can isolate it down to industry specific as well. And then Shannon and I together have some regional background and information, but we'll come back to you. That should be available probably in the next 4 to 5 weeks. So we'll review the benchmarking study and come back to you with some high level executive summary of what that looks like for your benefits and premiums relative to what else the market's bearing.
Don't get me wrong, I'm not recommending
No,
that we
no.
adjust that.
Yeah, and we wouldn't either. We just want to make sure we continue annually to show you the data.
Because I think typically when we had that discussion, our employee costs that we asked for were typically lower
Right. They
than
are,
other
yeah.
comps.
Yeah.
They are.
So,
It's a significant portion of their employment package too, right? Of their,
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's one thing we just want to make sure to continue to help educate and communicate that they understand what the package is as well as the value of it to the best we can.
yeah. So,
Any questions on those two pages? The
so
next,
it looks like your projections or your projections have been pretty spot.
you know what?
Spot on.
You're exactly right, Stan. If we look there, like in the only place you see red, right, on that column there, net claims towards expected, absent 1 year of 2022, every other year you ran right dead on an expected claims cost.
Right,
So again, changes can happen, blips can happen.
sure.
But what we will do then, once we have your June data, okay, which will be right second week of July-ish, we will do a projection for you for 2026 based on expected claims costs. So that can give you a target to begin a budget, right? We won't have stop loss firm and final at that point, but it's a good conversation starting point for you to develop your budget. And
We always appreciate people that have a crystal ball,
thank you. You can count me in.
even actuaries.
Yeah, exactly. But you're exactly right. You've been dead off. 4 out of the last 5 years, you've been dead on unexpected claims costs.
Good.
Okay. Only thing I want to mention on the other page, in the light gray other column, the V, I think if I'm reading correctly, which I can't really see that little, but that's where I'm coming up with the $83,904 of your claims cost that you've truly spent for those individuals that had a higher individual specific level than our standard 55,000. Which takes me to the next page. Identifying where we are on the large claimants. The number 1 is at 109,000. Number 2 is at 84,000. We're very close to that 85,000 individual specific. So stop loss would kick in following that. And then you can see the others there at 50 and 49. And again, stop loss kicks in for those individuals at 55,000. And then you can see the pharmacy amounts listed there as well. Again, one of them I can tell you is still realizing some savings through the Prudent RX. And the other, there is anticipated one of the medications to have biosimilars available at a lot less cost amount sometime yet here in 2025.
Do you think with the federal proposal to decrease drug cost, is that gonna,
Right now.
and I don't know where that's
Yeah.
at. I mean, I haven't kept up on it,
Yeah.
but I know that's one of the big pushes
Yeah.
from President Trump.
It's an excellent question. Right now, that would help at the Medicaid, Medicare level.
I see.
Right now, there's nothing at the employer level that's been announced, publicly announced,
I
right?
see.
So again, we've got our compliance team, they're connected in Washington. I've got 30 U.S. attorneys throughout the, with USI throughout the country that's got their ears to the ground. That said, a couple of other comments. The state of Indiana has a bill pending that would provide full transparency around pharmacy. So there's some more to come there, which would help. It's not gonna necessarily lower our costs immediately, but it would help. And then again, I think from a fiduciary responsibility, the process we're going through now of the full RFP, looking at other vendors, looking at what cost savings with the least amount of disruption to your folks that could provide. And with a true partner, right now, that the challenge is 80% of the medications are being dispensed from the large 3 or 4 pharmacy benefit managers. PBMs is the terminology they're kicking around, right? Well, you've got these other vendors then that are coming to the table that are negotiating better cost and providing the clinical support. Right now, that's all being driven at the level of the pharmacy benefit managers. Guess what? It's to their benefit, not necessarily isolated down to each client benefit. You're still getting rebates, you're still getting values of discounts and contracts and all of that. Zero transparency, and then there's no clinical support surrounding that. The partners we're looking at now can give us some cost savings, can give us true transparency. We're gonna know every month what we're spending in pharmacy. And then the clinical consulting of that to not only help us review and determine what makes sense to present for potential future savings, but it's also going to support your employees because they've got a clinical person that they can talk to about their medication. Or if it happens to not be on a formulary, they've got a clinical person that's readily, and in most of these we're talking to now, their call wait times are less than 6 seconds, 12 seconds, less than a minute.
Wow.
To really truly give your people the support. Right now, you get a medication, you take it to the pharmacy, it may go through, it may say it's not covered. Where do they go? They have no place to go for that support. So what we're looking at now is truly making that a whole rounded approach to fill in that gap.
Back to previous discussions, we've had discussions on name brand versus generics. And as to date, I don't think we've required generics, have we?
No, we don't have to.
Is that a-
therapy, and we don't have that.
Is that a discussion that we need to revisit, or is that?
I'll tell you what my thoughts are right today, before getting through the complete process of the three, is typically the best way to roll out a new partner is to keep things as they are today for at least the first quarter, 6 months. Then we've got true data to evaluate exactly what you said. Where should we go from here? What other things? Because if you don't, if you all of a sudden are changing and then you're also changing 4 or 5 steps for your people, they're all of a sudden, their perception right out of the gate is, what they do to me, what they take away, this
Oh,
isn't what I've had
right.
before. So
Right.
really the best approach, what we've seen work most effectively, is give it, grandfather everything in for the first, quarter, 6 months, whatever that looks like. Then we've got true data to come back to you and say, well, we would suggest you put in step therapy or mandatory generics, or exclude this list of specialty medications. Those are the type of things that the data is going to help you drive.
Good.
Great question. Anything else from me on the experience report?
So nothing at this time that you're recommending that we change?
Not at this time, yeah. More to come. Again, pharmacy, I think, is our biggest area for potential improvement, both from cost and experience for the employees. So that's our next big one to tackle, to help try to get those costs aligned. We are watching the network savings that we've seen improve this year because of the decisions that were made for 2025. Again, there's not any hospitalizations, which is where that true savings was going to be recognized. But we are seeing overall, both the Parkview plan and the Lutheran plan, average savings year to date, and again, it's early, are down about 10 to 12%, depending on which of the networks you're looking at. So I think we
Good.
are seeing an improvement, but it's difficult to measure the total value of the elimination of the Lutheran Preferred as our third network, because we haven't seen much hospitalizations, and that's really where you are going to see the significant plan savings. But both are averaging down from a percentage standpoint of where we were last year.
Good.
So more to come on that again.
Any other changes that we'll be looking at when we get to renewal time, you think?
Well, I'll speak to one that Shannon and I have talked briefly about, and really just as recently as last week. And then we're going to get back together after the pharmacy review and look at our other initiatives. We've talked about at least looking at other third-party administrators, TPAs, if you want to
Right.
use the acronyms, right? To just see.
So that would be Shopping Allied, is that?
Yes.
Our current TPA is Allied, so
Yeah.
we would be looking at,
Yeah. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, and in doing that, Steve, if you went with, we'll look at other TPAs that are privately owned, and then we'll also look at, there's really 2, what I call insurance carriers that also have TPAs that we would look at and evaluate. UMR, which is a United Healthcare based, and Anthem would be the other ones, just to make sure we've done our due diligence, looking at both cost as well as network savings on an outcome. I can tell you that those networks won't perform to the level of our TRP, which is the true advantage of staying more independent with.
Well, and I, correct me if I'm wrong, Shannon, I don't think we've had many complaints with Allied from a user standpoint.
Not from a user, no.
Okay.
I have some frustrations
From an
every now and
administrative
then.
standpoint.
Yeah. From an
And
administrative
from a cost standpoint, I have no clue whether they're comparable or not to what we're
Right.
gonna see,
Right.
but
Yeah,
And that's what I think we're looking
Yeah.
for, is to just make sure
due
that,
diligence.
yeah, that cost wise, we're getting what we're paying for. We wanna get the best cost that we can. In terms of like actual major changes, PBM and TPA are the 2 that we're looking at for 26. And then minor changes, we talked about wellness. That's a big one that we talk about every year. And then we talked about specific stop loss, which Jody does every year. She looks at those different rates for us every year.
yeah, I think that's
This is the part where they tell us to lose weight.
what we pay for stop loss. I guess my question, as we begin to take on more of that risk, how
Yeah.
does that benefit us from a cost standpoint? And
Right.
at what point would you recommend
Yeah.
we be at? And shop that a little bit.
Yeah, and our actuaries will prepare a benchmarking for that too, to tell you exactly if we did this is what we would expect it to see, and this is where we would
Right.
see your best value, your second best, your third best, and then try to narrow that gap, because we are on a relatively low stop loss.
Yeah.
Do you see
Feels low.
any federal legislation that could affect any of our business?
Not right now. Not right now. There's nothing that's been announced or considered, or at one point, Doug, there was conversation that, trying to make some changes to the Affordable Care Act. The most public one that was being discussed was the preventive. I hope to goodness that doesn't happen, because that really is truly one of the areas that's helping at least try to keep future costs down, right? Because early detection, all of those things come into play relative to your long-term health costs. So I'm hoping, I haven't heard anything about that recently, but that was the most recent that we've really heard that would impact the public sector benefit.
I guess partly for the sake of the benefit of Doug, who we've gone to a different provider and a different system since you were involved last. Shannon has done a huge amount of research and worked together with Jody to get us a very comprehensive report that's actually readable, that I typically don't sleep through like I used to, but I mean, not that I would. Anyway, just kudos to Shannon and Jody for helping us to find the best plan that we can offer our employees. So thank you.
Thank you.
Do we offer our employees an opportunity for screening on the basic blood pressure, those kind of things?
We do an annual health fair, and in previous years, we have done a Chem 30, which is 30 different levels that they
Right.
test for. And last year, the commissioners were gracious enough to extend that to include TSH, which is your thyroid, PSA, which is prostate for men, and then A1C, obviously, which is your glucose. So the county covered that last year, and then I asked the hospital to include blood pressure and BMI, which they did for no charge.
Mhm.
So I'm hoping that will be the plan again for this year. And so we cover that for employees at no cost to them, and that's typically in November, but this year we're gonna do it a couple weeks early, I think in October.
And what, do almost all the employees take advantage of that, or is it a disappointing percent that do?
No, it's pretty good. Typically in previous years, before we did the TSH, A1C and PSA, I had about 40% participation of the 167 that we had enrolled last year. I think I had about 110.
Yeah.
So it jumped up to about 65, 70. So it was pretty good.
Is there anything that we could do to encourage the 40 or 50 that did participate to get involved?
That's part of the wellness initiatives that we've talked about. So unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, one of the things that we've talked about a lot is that in order to incentivize somebody to participate in something like that, you typically have to tie it to a financial incentive, which means that we would have to either give them a financial incentive or penalize them financially, which means
Yeah.
increasing the premiums or giving them some kind of bonus for
Mhm.
participating in that event. So it kind of depends on which way you guys would
Yeah.
want to take it, but that's something that we could consider and talk about for 26 if you wanted to.
I think they had donuts, didn't they?
And
We did.
Shit,
Did buy
yeah, it's
donuts.
kind of contrary to the whole wellness
I
thing.
did bring
but-
bananas too.
But
in my
yeah.
defense.
She did.
Not apples or something?
Protein bars.
And do we do that here on site?
We do it at the hospital. Yep.
Would it help if we did it on site? Would that
It was
increase
a
the?
nice setup, cause they had that whole classroom set up
Yeah,
and you kind of made the laps and.
we
Yeah,
tried
it was
that
not-
on-site business and it got to be in the privacy got to be an issue.
To answer your question, I don't know how beneficial it would be because a vast majority of our employees are not actually in this building.
Okay.
I know that most of them are probably downtown, but most of them have to travel anyways, because we have so
I
many
just wondered
buildings.
if the location had anything to do with participation.
I don't think so. And the hospital has the free coffee there. They have great breakfast. So I think it's honestly kind of a benefit for most people to go out there and get their
Well,
coffee
one thing-
afterwards.
As you communicate to all the employees, you might tack on the bottom line, if they had to do this on their own, what the cost would be. Probably be $300-400 at least.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Right. What we've historically seen is, first of all, that participation, believe it or not, is amazing.
Yeah.
Without having any
Really?
different,
Okay,
without having anything tied to it, right?
Yeah.
So again, me as a
Right.
USI employee, if I don't do it, I
That's
got
interesting.
30% higher premiums.
That's good.
And it's big chunk, right? So it's really absent that financial piece. And typically, Doug, what our wellness consultants will tell us, you really need an annual difference of about $600 a year to get those people that aren't gonna do it.
Attention.
You got it. You got it.
Yeah.
Which,
Well,
when-
good deal. Sounds great. Sounds like you're very progressive here.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Let's answer the question when Jody will be back again with us.
That's up to you
Yeah.
guys. I would think that once we have ancillary marketing, September, October. we would
Yeah, I don't
definitely
think we
check
need
that.
to see you back for Q2 reporting, maybe just when we're ready to talk about renewal time and.
Yeah, so I'd like to get that budget number in front of you, right? Which would be a 10-15 minute conversation
Okay.
relative, and again, I'll need June, my underwriting team will need June data to do
Okay.
that, which typically comes out, the 5th of the month. That's, July's a holiday, so I would say late July.
Okay.
I should at least get that initial budgeted number.
Okay.
Then, if you can have that as a benchmark, then once we get into, preliminary stop loss numbers, et cetera, would be the September, October to get those.
We'll just work with Shannon
Yep.
whenever you think you need to be back on our agenda.
Absolutely.
We'll be always
Yeah.
happy to
Awesome.
hear from you.
Okay.
We
And,
need all the information we can get. This
Yeah.
is apart from payroll, this is our
Yep.
biggest
Absolutely.
expense.
Keep that
Biggest
crystal
investment.
ball polished up, shiny.
Well, I appreciate the coverage that we offer our employees because that's a
It's-
huge benefit for working for Adams County.
It really is. And I'm available anytime if anybody ever needs to reach out to me, please. Shannon knows how to track me down.
Okay,
Deal.
thanks, Jody.
All right.
Nice seeing you again.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thanks, ladies. I asked Mark, if you're not on yet, but I asked Mark, I said, we're running ahead of time and now Michaela's here and so we're right back on schedule again. So Michaela, come on up. Is this not our first time seeing you? You came in and introduced yourself and so.
Morning, gentlemen.
So
Morning.
thank you for coming and giving us an update. I appreciate that.
Thanks. Thanks for having me
So
today.
what's happening in your world?
Well, we've been really busy at the Soil and Water District. Couple updates on some of our projects. I've been with the district for 7 months now. And when I came in, we had a Clean Water Indiana grant. That grant was due to expire in December of last year. We had only spent about 15% of the allotted funds, and we hadn't really hit the deliverables, but I was able to get an extension on that grant. And that now expires June 30th. We are on track to suspend all the funds and meet all of those deliverables within that Clean Water Indiana grant.
Very
Through that
good.
grant, those are the pollinator boxes that we have at the trailhead. We've done an installation at Limberlost at the historic site, just by the Nature Center there. We are in the middle of starting one at the Merit Center. And then I've also put in 8 smaller plots for individual community members here. And I've worked with 3 producers for large plots. And through that funding source, we did a series of classes at the Merit Center. So we hosted a 4-part class series kind of on how to garden with conservation in mind, looking at water quality and soil health practices.
Are
and
you
then-
gonna be involved with their garden at all on that back courtyard?
Well, if that ever comes kind of to fruition. So I would love to offer some insight there and do some planning and just kind of waiting for the next step in that process. But we also have been able to distribute pollinator-focused educational resources to over 1,000 different students within our community. That would be our Amish community as well as our public school system. And then we're hosting a Pollinator Palooza on June 14th. That's at Riverside Center. That's kind of a culmination of all of our efforts. Native plant giveaways, some children's activities, and so forth. So that's my Clean Water Indiana project. The second project we have is an on-farm demo grant. That grant, I actually wrote the agreement with Natural Resources Conservation Service when I was in Allen County at the Allen County Soil and Water Conservation District. So we have a demo farm here in Adams County. That's Gene Whitty's farm. And what we're doing is we're trying to showcase best management practices to improve soil conditions as well as water quality. So those are things like cover crops, grass waterways, nutrient management plans. So we do soil sampling throughout the year, but we're looking at plant tissue data, sap testing. We are putting in a weather station to kind of monitor weather to see how that correlates to all of the data we're gathering off the fields. And through that, then we're going to host a series of field days. We'll have 2 this year to talk to producers about implementing some of those best management practices. Exciting for this year, we have included Mike Whirling's farm. And then we're also doing some plots at Adams Central as well. So we'll be working with the FFA to use some of those best management practices.
I know in the past, the Selking farms have been involved.
Mhm.
I don't know if they're still involved.
Yeah, they're not involved in our on-farm demo, but we work pretty close with the Selkings. They're just great stewards.
Well, and they had really been moving more towards not just minimum till, but no till.
Yeah.
And it was real interesting for them to talk about the financial part of that.
Yep. So at the end of the year, we did a meeting in December. We took in to consideration all of the data and the ROI on a conservation system. And we used comparative data that was issued by Purdue to make the argument that, hey, you can actually save money. You have less time in your seat and you're performing better soil health practices. So you're actually saving on your nutrient management plan. So we're going to do that again this year.
Well, and I think one of the hard things for them was it doesn't happen in 1 year.
Right. It's ongoing. It's
Mhm.
ongoing. Yeah, we're really excited about that program, and I'm glad that we are expanding it this year. I think we had one of the most successful on-farm demos. Next year, we'll be hosting the Natural Resources Conservation Service leadership team from all over the United States. So we'll have at least the leadership from 5 states throughout the Midwest coming here to tour our farms and
Wow.
talk about our projects. So that'll be in July of next year. We're going to
Good for
New
you.
York.
Congratulations.
It'll be exciting. It'll be really
Yeah.
exciting. I think we're doing good work here. So, but from that on-farm demo, we've also launched a farmer to farmer program. So that gives producers the opportunity for more of a one-on-one meeting with our host farmers who are pretty deep into that conservation path. So they can go out one-on-one into the farm field. They schedule that at their convenience. So we're having some success with that. It's pretty exciting. Our annual plan of work, it was decided by our Board of Supervisors that it is invasive species management. So we're working to address some of those issues here within the county. We hosted an invasive species training day. We had State of Indiana Cooperative Invasive Species Management come up and kind of guide us through detection, removal, and some things we can do to just kind of help keep that under control. We did that at St. Mary's Nature Preserve, and after being out there, pretty much realized that it is not much of a nature preserve. It's kind of an invasive species preserve. It's
Oh.
really bad.
Do we have any boa constrictors?
Not yet.
Not that
We don't
bad,
know. We don't know. We saw a ton of black locust. Of course, Callery pear, Bradford pear is just rampant. Bush honeysuckle. The entire ground is covered in winter creeper. So I'm working on a management plan of some steps that we could take, and the costs behind that, the budget on what that might look like for us as a soil and water district and as a county to kind of tackle some of those.
Who controls that preserve? Does the city?
I believe so. So when I booked it through the Riverside Center.
Are they cooperative with what you're thinking?
We haven't talked too much. I thought I would put a plan together and kind of present it. We haven't the intention of posting some weed wrangles there, but there's just so much that we would need a logger pretty much to go in and clean up. It's really bad. But through the invasive species plan of work, we've launched a landowner survey. So I'm sending that out to some of my producers and landowners just to kind of get an idea of what might be on their property. And then how we can mitigate that. We're also doing an invasive for native tree swap. So if you have a native like burning bush or a calorie pear, we have some funding and working with the Great Tree Canopy Comeback to fund some free trees for the community and get some of those invasives out of here and then put in some native trees. So that'll be at no cost to the people that participate.
Very good.
And just a couple other things I'll touch on our education here. We distribute 1,932 educational guides to our Amish schools and 44 educator guides. We do that twice a year. So we're just plugging away at that.
How many Amish schools do we have now?
I don't know the number of schools. I just know the number of students. I think it's 46 maybe.
Gotcha.
46, I believe.
50s.
50s.
Is it? We don't distribute to all of them, but we work with the Geneva Library and Geneva puts those together. We send our materials there. So Kelly Amsted's my program coordinator, has been out teaching the water cycle. So she's in South Adams schools teaching quite frequently this time of year. We just did Splash Day. For those of you that might know what Splash is, it was my first splash.
You'll have a new t-shirt?
Yeah, we have a new t-shirt. We had around 300 kids this year. They were a really good group of kids in the morning. So the afternoon, not so much. We fed them snacks and then they were just a little unruly. So we did help with the Jay County Field Day at Loblolly. I hosted a pollination station. So upcoming events, I'm doing ribbon cutting for our 2 pollinator installations in Geneva on Friday. We have Pollinator Palooza on the 14th. I have an all things covered field day on August 19th. And then this year I'm partnering with my kind of sister organization, the Mommy Watershed Alliance. I'm a board member and a longtime board member to do town and country tours here in Adams County. So we'll take a group of hopefully some of our commissioners along with our residents to look at some best management practices on fields. We'll also look at some small farms and we'll just kind of talk about conservation. Those will be free tours. So we're hoping to do 2 tours this year, bring some programming. And then I'm also working with the Upper Wabash River Basin Commission to submit a letter of intent for a rewrite of phase 1 of the watershed management plan for the Upper Wabash. So I believe.
Are you gonna be able to, because I mean, it seemed like the funding for the Upper Wabash River Basin Commission was next to nothing. I don't know.
Well, yeah, because, we had petitioned Travis Holdman for some funding
Oh,
to help us out. That did not go through. The only option would be, in addition to doing what Chauncey just talked about in grants, would be that if each county were willing to kick in more money, perhaps we could get a part-time administrator to help do some things similar to what the Maumee does.
gotcha.
So that's on the agenda for our upcoming meeting.
Yep, and on June 11th is the next Upper Wabash meeting, so they'll discuss that. But we are submitting the letter of intent with the intent behind the letter of intent to be that if they're awarded the grant, they will hire someone to actually write the grant and the watershed management plan. I'm just doing the letter of intent because right now I don't have the capacity to really write that grant with the other work that I'm doing. With that grant being said, Allen County was awarded a 205J grant for the rewrite of the St. Mary's watershed management plan. Their letter of intent was actually submitted from Adams County by my predecessor. It was then transferred to Allen County, and I actually wrote the grant in Allen County. and then came to Adams County.
Isn't that crazy?
So, yeah, it is kind of crazy, but they were awarded that, so. I
Tell them they owe you.
Yeah, they do. They know, they know. They know. But they were awarded that 205J grant for that rewrite. But I think that we as a county will be instrumental in the formation of that plan. We're forming a steering committee that will be made up of, Allen, Adams, and Jay counties primarily. And we'll look at land use throughout the counties and what we want included into that plan. So.
Now, on your board of supervisors, just for the media to give you a little PR, do they meet monthly?
Yes, so.
And that's open to the public?
It is, yes.
Okay.
So if you want this is my 7 to 10 minute report. If you want my 45-minute report, come on in the third Wednesday of the month at 6 p.m. at the Soil and Water Office.
Eric, you might want to cover that. Her board of supervisors meet monthly. Would you give him time and
Yep.
place, please?
6 p.m. the third Wednesday of the third Tuesday of the month. Yeah, Tuesday, sorry about that. 6 p.m. at the Soil and Water Office.
And my other question is with all the cuts that's been done on the federal, from what I've read, Adams County is not going to be affected. Is that correct?
So the Soil and Water District will not be affected because we are county funded. Right now, we lost our district conservationist with NRCS. Brian Musser is no longer with NRCS. Our Farm Service Agency is down to one person in our office. Dawn Hummel is the only one that's left there. Everyone else is gone.
Wow.
So there's definitely some strain that's getting passed down to being able to service our producers, but we're trying to step in as much as we can. We do have those federal credentials, so we can help with a lot of the programs that they run and manage. So Kelly and I are trying to assist, and they're sending people here and there.
Dawn is the only person, there's not she's director, person, everything.
It's Dawn.
That's huge.
Yeah, so they're pulling from other counties to try to have somebody come in the office a couple days a week to help Dawn, but it's definitely, we're feeling the pain. There has been some talk about not housing soil and water in the USDA Service Center. That hasn't come to fruition, or nothing else has been disclosed, but we talked with Shannon a little bit, and our board is going to hopefully set up a meeting with the commissioners to have a backup plan in case we are saying, hey, you have to get out of here.
Yeah.
We're not paying your rent as to where we will go.
So far, so good though.
So far, so good. So we're just kind of riding that wave and
Okay,
hoping
well,
for the best.
certainly appreciate all the
Yeah.
work you're doing. And
yeah, thanks.
Yep,
It's been
thank you.
busy, and I'm excited to be here and serve Adams County and the producers and community.
Well,
So
we're glad to have you for
if
sure.
there's anything I can ever do, or you have any insight as to things you'd like to see, please reach out to me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Don't be a stranger. Come back
Absolutely.
anytime you have stuff for
Sorry, I
us.
feel like that was a lot really quick.
Yeah, good job. Thanks for your
We're
update.
at 975 South 11th Street.
South 11.
Yeah.
I said South 11, okay, thank you.
Come on up, Mark.
Something I said?
Everybody's leaving.
Everybody's leaving. Yeah, not gone.
Well, we have 4 this morning.
Okay.
You had a laundry list. Stan will be back in a minute. It's not
150
far.
west, 700 south, the closest roads we got. And it's just one rectangle, and they are breaking out this from that. There have been some variances given for being too close to buildings, because where that line is at,
Mhm.
and for the being less than 2 acres.
Okay.
But they have a full our system is in, and everything's already exists on this plot, so
And those variances have been approved by the,
that's already been done, yes.
Okay.
Step done.
Says Weldon, Wendell, I'm sorry, Wendell.
This is just south of South Adams.
see what's going on, Stan. You've got a square piece here. It's just 1.63 acres being carved off the corner of it.
I see.
And they got a variance to be less than 2 acres.
Okay,
So, your motion to,
I'll move we accept.
okay,
Second.
okay. Motion passes.
So this is a single lot, turn into 2 lots. Right down the
Okay,
middle.
so then we're talking about this piece here, divided down the middle.
What's the, 1,000 south?
1,000 south, 500 east.
500 east.
It's closer to 500 than 450.
So the access to those two are off of 1,000?
It's off of this. Yep. This is newly shown. The old one is just existing.
Yeah, everything was done right, just compact, burn ready mix in order to concrete.
I guess, yes.
Yeah.
Your motion to approve, guys.
So moved.
Second.
2 lots only, huh? Just 2 lots.
Yep.
Okay. So.
This is 500 south, 200 east. Just east of that. Taking this one piece. Turning 2 lots.
Where's the pot?
What's that?
You know why?
On this portion, or is that
That could go one more.
this?
Microphone.
It could go one more, because you're lot 3.
And if everything's legal, I mean, up to date, I move we
I turned
accept.
it back on. Try not to lean against it. Turns it off.
Gearing them up.
Yep. People looking for places to build.
Yeah, it won't sweat either.
I think everybody was working yesterday forming concrete, so I've been driving around like a. Sheriff's not here,
There
right?
you
Yeah,
are.
I've been driving around like a crazy person this morning.
Okay, riding ball.
All right,
So,
550 north, Highway 101. And we are simply taking this piece right here and dividing it off. So there's just 2 lots instead of 1.
5.2.
So there's an easement back to this?
This
Access
is,
is off of
this is right on
550,
550.
okay.
Yes, sir. So they literally just have road frontage right there,
Okay,
over 3 acres.
move we accept.
Second. Motion passes. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
This is, everything goes around, I think this is the same prospect, yeah, they got some kids, I think.
Sure.
Beside them.
Yeah, that's the way it works.
The. Get a little piece. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Did Dave
Thanks,
Fox
Mark.
contact you by chance? He called me and wanted your number. He was gonna,
He did, I actually forget what.
he was, guy that lives close to Lynn Grove wanted to buy 2 acres.
Oh, yes, yes, he did. I heard him and.
If he goes through with that, would that affect his property for future?
He could do a minor subdivision, he'd still have, it won't affect him and he could do 2 more splits. If he wanted.
So I think he
It
wanted to
doesn't
know.
affect how he farms it.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, Mark. Anything else? Thank you. Clayton, what have you got for us?
I don't have anything specific today, unless you guys have any specific questions. Other than, I mean, we're moving forward. We talked to an appraiser last week about moving forward with the necessary steps for qualified letters on the 800 North project.
Okay.
I think from an economical standpoint, and we made sure that it's legally viable, rather than having the appraiser probably go and appraise every single property, we'll have them reappraise one, and then use basically a kind of a standard deviation or basically price per acre to provide the relevant offers to each of the landowners. So that's where we're at on that, and yeah, nothing else specific for me.
Makes sense.
Anything else for Clayton?
I don't,
Okay. Anything? Shannon, what you got for us?
Anything, but thank you.
Okay.
okay, good.
Anything from the public? Ed? Sure you don't have anything for us? Okay.
The Reds haven't been winning enough.
Stan, Doug, anything?
I'm good.
When we have to go live in July, can we have Ed do an introduction for us maybe?
Like a, play-by-play, do play-by-play
Yeah.
maybe?
Are
Yeah,
we doing,
yeah,
Do you have anything, Stan? I move we adjourn.
okay. Motion
Second.
I need to
made
figure out how
seconded to adjourn, we're adjourned.
I need to figure out how to keep Dan on without going off to this meeting.
You probably need to discontinue that, or maybe reach out to Ethan and see if we can. But I think if you end this meeting,
I'm gonna leave the meeting on WebEx here. He might. Okay, he's on there.
okay,
Fiber optic.
I can tell you if we're still live.
Yeah.
About it.
It said because it's not road.
This is still on recording, but I went out of WebEx invitation on here.
I read through it, it's interesting and
Hey,
it
Tony, can you run us through a
tries
copy
to
of the McKeel
define
Cook's report? off
the
here?
difference between
How do you stick it in?
easement, right away. We
Face
only
down?
really have
Oh, face up?
jurisdiction to the edge of the road and all
No, no,
that stuff.
it's
How's Jim?
Yeah, I know
You
Mark.
can have it.
Yeah,
Good?
thanks.
That'll do.
Mark and Brad are looking at it. I think the problem that we've identified with Chester is because that was so long ago. We don't know if there's actually ever a right of way for it. I'm not sure.
Or some of this stuff that goes in, I mean, we've never done anything that's not normal, so to speak, and stuff, allowing people to do stuff. So I don't know. You know, that's a long time ago.
Yeah,
It's surely changed.
correct. I'm sure they have.
Thank you, sir. Tony, there is a screw loose in county government.
That's my under the table.
I've got a-
Yeah.
Dan, I just found proof.
Two of those.
There's a screw loose in county government.
I don't.
Yeah,
Laying under the table.
I'll tell you where it's at, yeah.
I got a screw.
That's probably out of the box that I use to fix all these tables.
Not one of these chairs. I'm not sure what it came from.
No, probably not the chairs, but
It's been laying for days.
I know, remember when those tables were sagging?
Oh, I didn't realize that. No, I didn't realize. No.
Probably 6 months ago, I flipped them all upside down and put new
New
screws
screw, okay.
to screw that metal rail.
Oh.
He said to take it down.
Yeah, thank you very much.
No problem, I'll do it.
Cause if I click out of this, it goes away just like you do when you're reading.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.